Economists cite 3 phases of industrial development in our journey to where we are at the moment in terms of the production of things and our way of lives. Let me cite the 3 of them. The first one, they say, was the Industrial Revolution that was driven by the steam engines. Then we talked about the Industrial Revolution that was powered by electricity. And now they are citing another phase that is about to begin or has begun, depending on who you're talking to, and this one is driven by the internet. So let me begin with first a few definitions so that we all understand what we're talking about today in our special debate, which we are entitling East Africa ICT, Creating Silicon Africa. My name is Godfrey Muchiswa. Thank you very much for joining us today, and welcome. Now, Meg DeVito, Vice President of IoT at IBM, says, the Internet of Things is about bringing the physical and digital worlds together. Now, McKinsey has done a study on this Internet of Things and what it will do to how we produce things. They estimate that over the next 10 years, it's going to add $11 trillion to the global economy. So the question for many governments and many companies is, how do we make sure that we are able to participate in this? And how do we actually ensure that we are actually relevant? Let me introduce my guest for the discussion. I've got the Minister of Youth and ICT here in Rwanda, Minister Jean Philbert Nsengimana. Minister, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next to him, we've got Tongai Maramba, CEO Tigo here in Rwanda. Tongai, welcome.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Nkusi, CEO Liquid Telecom Rwanda. Thank you again for joining us here. Minister, we must start with you because we have seen various approaches to ICT development across the African continent and in other parts of the world. In Germany, for instance, they've got a whole think tank that's been set up. It involves business, it involves the private sector, it involves academics. Let's begin with Rwanda here. How have you approached this ICT revolution that people are talking about?
I think all started with a vision. What we've seen over the last 15 years, it's a dream coming true. And somebody has that dream. And that person is His Excellency President Paul Kagame, who back in 2000, as the country battled so many challenges to do with overcoming the aftermath of the genocide against Tutsis, as the country put together a program to rebuild, reconstruct, but also extend and sustain the gains. He saw that ICT was going to be a central part. And from that time, the vision was presented and discussed and sold to the entire population.
From 2000? From
2000. So it's been really almost 2 decades now. That's where ICT started getting understood. And remember, it is the time when people were used to just one radio. There was just one television.
Yeah.
Internet was nowhere to be seen. There was no mobile at that time, except for a few, like my friend Sam had one. But that's it. So it was really very, very ambitious to dream about an entire economy driven by ICT. But then we've moved through strategic planning. We are now in our 4th 5-year plan. We went through liberalizing the sector to attract more investment. We went through putting up the institutions and so on.
Yeah.
And then results today speak for themselves.
Regionally, how has it been approached?
I think there'll be some regional efforts as part of the East African community.
Yes.
I know there is an agenda at the African Union. But I think there is a lot still to be done at regional level to make sure that we are moving together.
Right. Let's talk from the private sector perspective. Can I begin with you, Sam? From your side, so we have seen the government driving this here in Rwanda at least. First of all, is that the right approach, or would you rather take the American approach where the private sector gets it together and just does the job?
I think
what have you seen?
Public-private sector partnership works best. There is a need for the government to be involved. There is also need for the private sector to take the lead. But sometimes the interests of the government and the private sector might not be the same. The government has a role to ensure that there is connectivity and communication to each of its citizens wherever they are.
Yeah.
Even in the rural areas, not in the urban. I can come in commercially as a private sector. I want a quick return on my investment.
Yeah.
So you have to balance the two. So working together,
I
that is the right
like your
formula.
definition of quick return on my investment. I'm not hearing profit. That's fine, but
Yes.
we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Have you been involved in the planning that the minister has been talking about?
Yes, I have.
In the 5-year plans?
I have, actually, and I was one of the first people to be included in that.
Right. So
That's how we moved MTN coming here as the first mobile operator. That was partnership with the government.
Sure.
And then the government has a smart way of doing things. Then you need to go.
Mm.
So initially, as the minister correctly put, in Rwanda we had a negative legacy of genocide. We are too literal, we had just killed each other, and the investors were scared.
Mm.
So to ensure that they are interested, you take the lead, you become part of them.
Mm.
And as soon as they see the opportunities,
Yeah.
the investors, then they jump on the bandwagon.
Sure.
Then they throw away the government,
Yeah.
and then the private sector saying, no, I want to be there myself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Tongai, from your perspective, from a private sector perspective, how have you seen the collaboration?
Well, I think one of the things that we've found as Tigo, so we've been in the market coming up to 6 years now, so relatively new into the market, into the sector. I think and this really distinguishes our experience in Rwanda from a lot of the other countries that we operate in, is that we've had a very strong bond of collaboration with government. So myself and the minister meet regularly. We talk about his ideas, we talk about my ideas, and more often than not, we're aligned in terms of where we want to go with especially the internet
Yeah.
and generally ICT.
Yeah.
So I think our experience has been once the sort of the higher level strategic plans have been done,
Yeah.
We're involved in the implementation, but it's very much a partnership.
Yeah. From your side, in terms of the strategy going into the region, have you seen a coordinated approach when looking at it from an East African perspective?
I would probably echo what the minister says, which is that there's some way to go when you look at it at the regional level.
Yeah.
There's a number of things that are happening now. There's some things that are being driven by the private sector itself that we're trying to put together,
Yeah.
which probably ought to be happening faster.
Sure.
There's conversations on, for example, in the mobile money businesses,
Yeah.
enabling cross-border transfers between the different operators in the different countries, and those are conversations that happen, but they probably take longer than they should, because the upside from those kinds of initiatives is tremendous. And so, I would say, and our sister company is in Tanzania.
Yeah.
We have quite different experiences in a lot of the way that we see ICT developing in the sectors,
Sure.
in the markets that we operate.
What would be the best approach, do you think, if you've got laggards, for instance? Because some people have been talking about the fact that perhaps what you need is to approach those countries that are able to move faster and leave those that are a little slow to catch up later. Would that work?
I think probably the minister is the best person to give an answer to that. In the private sector,
from your perspective, to say
yeah.
it as you see.
So I would speak from the private sector, and I
Yeah.
would say that typically what you want to do is
go
with the willing.
same speed.
No, I would actually say go with the willing.
Okay.
And the rest will follow.
Coalition of the willing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minister, I want to stick to this regional approach because it's important, of course, because we do know that there's a program within the EAC to harmonize ICT policies. You've got a program as well to reduce costs across the region, so that when you carry your phone from here to Tanzania, to Rwanda, to Kenya, to Burundi, you don't need to change SIM cards, and you're not going to be charged exorbitant rates.
Exactly.
Are we moving fast enough on that program?
I think
Where are we? Give us an update.
Great. I sideline with what I align with what Tongai just said, that we go with the willing, because we've had this regional approach for many years. The ESC as a block has been in place for so many years, but it wasn't until just 2 years ago when the Northern Corridor Alliance formed.
Right.
And those are the willing who wanted really to push things forward. And then progress has been much faster.
Okay.
That's when we came up with one area network, which is what you just described, allowing people to move and make phone calls and remain in touch and productive without any extra hindrances or cost. So, and that is just one flagship. There are so many other flagships. We want to make sure that our interconnectivity at the infrastructure level, the fiber is robust. We want to harmonize, for instance, standards to do with SIM card registration so that we can be tracking people who can commit crimes in their own country and migrating to the other, and so on and so forth. We are looking, as far as even the postal sector, to make sure that this ICT really enables businesses and make lives better. Now, are we moving fast enough? Yes, I would say that in the Northern Corridor we are moving fast enough. We would like to see things moving further in the other countries, and even at the African level we are coming up with this new formula, which is Smart Africa, which is, I believe, is going to start increasing that confidence that when people come together, they make things happen. And we are going to be building on those very early successes we are having in this region, in this Northern Corridor, to entice and invite others to join.
The process of building the institutions that you need to drive this, how fast is that moving?
Building institutions is something that sometimes takes time. It takes people's minds and mindset to align. It takes aligning the incentives. But then it takes, at the end of the day, the political will. So that's what really moved things in the East African region. And when we hosted the first Transform Africa, having 7 heads of state giving us assignments, things to be done within the next few years, 2 years, and now we'll be back in October to report back. I think the political will is there. At least we have champions, those who are willing, and who are willing to go with those and demonstrate impact, and we have no doubt that others will follow.
I wanted to test the political will a little bit. So in terms of Rwanda itself, you guys have set up a target of 100,000 jobs from this ICT revolution, $1 billion in terms of private sector opportunities. I want you to think about that. Have you seen the opportunities that have been touted through this plan that the minister has set forth, which has been published, which has been discussed? I want both answers from both of you gentlemen. Can I begin with you, Sam, and then we'll come to Tongai.
Let me first give you an interesting statistic.
Please.
In the last 18 months, there has been more data globally than before the world was created. That data and the infrastructure and the tools driving it, and the very fact that in Africa, our connectivity, talk on the phone, talk on broadband, it's at an absurd level. The rest of the world is up there saturated.
Sure. Whose fault is it?
Our backwardness, it is our fault.
Sure.
As Africans, I don't play the blame game. Because now technology is such that
it is universal.
We can leapfrog any new thing that comes. I don't see why it is introduced in America before it is introduced in Kigali. Or Harare or wherever it is.
Absolutely.
So now, taking advantage, we have the old legacies that we still dwell by. Talk about internet, we are just downloading, but we are not uploading. There's no local content.
Okay, so there's an issue that you are looking at there in terms of infrastructure that needs to be built. So it's infrastructure, and it's also the policies that enable that infrastructure to be built. Who should be doing what?
Actually, the policy, let me talk about the policy at the ministerial level and the regulators. It should be very clear. They set up a clear policy to ensure that good regulatory regime, equitable and fair to everybody. I don't even agree with the principle where they say, okay, now in the region the price should be this. Competition is doing it. We can't afford to stay behind.
You don't want regulation?
No, the best regulator is the one that just oversees. Is the one who doesn't regulate. The rules are there. You go by, it is like you're driving your car. So you don't have to wait for a policeman to arrest you.
Are the rules okay, Sam?
The rules are okay. The implementation and the slowness that was being referred to is what has to be worked on.
Tongai?
So, the rules are fine. I mean, I think we, most importantly, they're very transparent. So we know exactly where we stand. We know what's expected of us. We know how we're measured. We know the sphere within which we can operate. And even when we find opportunities which take us outside of those bounds, we can have a very open and productive conversation about that with our regulators. We've been able to do that in mobile financial services with the central bank.
Are there some that we can tweak, change to make things better?
You know, I don't think it's in the rules of the game that we need to work. I think the kind of the underlying drivers of growth of the sector are the things that need to start to happen, and we've started doing a lot of these things already. But you know, one of the key, I think, priorities for us, which is something that again government is already working on, is on education. I mean, we need to have a pool of talent which is able to take advantage of the opportunities that the internet presents.
The opportunities are there, the accrual of talent you're saying has not been moving fast enough.
I think the opportunities are there for the taking, and I think that what we really need to do is to start to build that talent base, because what comes with that talent base is more talent, more innovation, and the ecosystem feeds itself and grows. So, you know, for me, what I think is going to be really key to this is, you know, first of all, let's have that ambition. Let's say, you know, it's time we started having global internet businesses coming out of East Africa. And then let's start to build the enablers for the talent to come to be able to create those. I mean, I think if you visit Silicon Valley in the US, you know, one of the most distinctive things about that place is a very tangible sense that the people in that space have an expectation that when they go into business, they are going to succeed. It doesn't factor into their minds that, oh, this should only be for California, or you know, there's already a global expectation. I think that's the kind of thing we should be having here.
I want us to come back and talk about education, whether it's adequate and whether the technical colleges and the universities that we have had teaching people the right skills. But Minister, I want to come to an issue that he raised around competition. But to competition, I want to attach cost as well, because one of the frequent complaints you hear around telecommunications companies is the exorbitant costs of making phone calls, of receiving data, of being able to just be connected, to be connected. Where do you stand? Are costs low enough for you in the environment that you've created?
I think costs are falling.
They are falling? Are they where you want them to be?
They are not where we want them to be. That's why we watch how fast they are falling. And sometimes I share the frustration and impatience, that sense that prices could fall faster. But then let's not forget that there are people who have made investments in this sector. They need a return on investment.
Yes.
Let's not forget that what the perception of costs being high is not in absolute terms. It's in relative terms, because just incomes are still low.
Minister,
but
you're sounding like one of these guys.
I'm from a private sector perspective.
Oh.
And talking about regulation, it's an aspect I wanted to come back to, because I'm the one representing the regulator, you know, the government.
Yes.
Here, I think we need to look at the intention of regulating and the philosophy. We come from perspective of very light touch regulation. Don't fix it if it's not broken.
Right.
But
if it's just low prices in terms of philosophy?
Exactly. So what we don't want to fix, for instance, is the retail price. But when it comes to things like interconnection, when it comes to things like infrastructure sharing, then we absolutely need to come in and, put in place mechanisms that will facilitate to the market to move where it should go.
In terms of the competition that you see within the Rwandan space, are you happy with the level of competition here? There's no market collusion? These guys don't talk to each other?
They have to talk to each other. They have to talk to each other because they already share infrastructure. So it's, I think it's more right to talk about competition and collaboration. I think the incentives in the market are such that they cannot collude. That's what I believe.
Okay, you're happy with that?
We watched that, and I was watching it, and for instance, one of the things I was realizing is that the volume of ATM transactions for the first time started going down, and we're talking about whether this is mobile money killing the ATM business, but he has both businesses. He has both, mobile wallet and switching business. So competition, I think, is the order of the day, and it's competition, and it's private-public partnership. But also at the end of the day, all this is jargon to a normal citizen. The citizen, what they want to see is affordable and accessible and reliable communications. And that's why really our focus needs to be, whether you're a regulator, whether you're a private operator, or just the government who sets a policy. Yeah,
gentlemen, come in if you will here, but I wanted to ask you about competition within the region from your respective companies. Can I start with you, Tongai, and then we'll go to Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's never dull. I'll say that much. At least in the two markets that we operate in East Africa, we really understand the markets that we operate in almost in discrete markets within themselves, actually. So, for example, we wouldn't think about the voice business and the data business and the mobile payments business as one market. It doesn't make any sense. So we consider, our position in each of those markets and our competitors within each of those markets who could be different and are not necessarily always the MNOs, and build our strategies accordingly. So I think, what's interesting is that that sort of added complexity of the number of markets that you're now competing in. And mobile payments, which I mentioned a few times, is actually probably more relevant in East Africa, where 1/3 of all the mobile wallets of the world are. Very successful, Kenya, of course, but then also Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda as well. So that's also really important, but it has its own competitive dynamics. The internet business, I think, is now nascent. Very important for us, very important for a number of institutions, and you're going to see there that there's also a different mix of competitors that are operating in that space.
Sam?
You see, the nature of the ICT sector, and in particular in the region, as it is for the rest of the continent, it is continuously changing. The only constant in ICT is change.
It is.
So if you can't, and that change, everybody must understand. If it is a minister in the policy, whatever was being worked on, it would have to be addressed based on the new developments.
True.
If it is a regulator, you have to work on it. If you are an operator, many companies, used to operate, you have your own infrastructure. But now, over the top applications, WhatsApp, people are coming up, and they're using that infrastructure without even paying for them. So if you think you are getting revenue, let's say from voice, now even the triple play is not adequate. Voice, video, data, all in one pipe. So you have to be part of the complete value chain.
Absolutely.
He's answering about money. Now, there's no telecom company. If you're not part of the financial institution, then
you're going to struggle. I picked up the other day that there's a new role called the Chief Transformation Officer. And this is the guy who used to be the Chief Digital Officer, who we used to know as the Technology Officer, etc., etc. So we're learning all the time. Let's stick to the learning aspect and talk about education. Are you satisfied with the workforce that is coming out of the schools, that is coming out of the universities, and coming into the workforce?
If I have to be specific about, let's say, our experience as Liquid here, the truth is we are not satisfied, because we have to leapfrog and now go into this ever-changing technology. The educational system is still the traditional one. In a competitive world, I want to employ somebody, and I want productivity and day one. That's why many of us are creating something different. We realize that skills we require are not taught in schools.
That's an important point you make, actually. I'm going to have an interview, I think it's sometime next week, where we're talking to a lecturer at the universities, one of the universities in South Africa, and we're talking about the Internet of Things as a subject. But let me get the views of the others before we go there. Okay?
Yeah, so I agree with Sam. I think it's not satisfactory.
What's missing?
Let's say the volume of qualified young people that are coming into the sector. I think we still have a way to go on that.
The volume.
The volume, yes. That's to say that when we're looking for talent to come into our organization, it takes a lot of work to find people to come in, and very often we need to, as Sam was saying, we need to put them on programs where we help them to start to develop the skills that they need that we ideally would want them to come into the organization already possessing.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, it's an opportunity, right? It's a space that really needs to,
Sure.
to grow and improve. Not only in the traditional, let's say, spheres that we have that we require in telecommunications,
Absolutely.
but also in a lot of the new areas. So data analytics, I think, is something that's going to be incredibly important with the Internet of Things and generally in terms of internet-based businesses. We need to have that talent coming through so that we can bring them in and they can help us grow our businesses.
Minister, I wanted them to speak first before you spoke. Have these things been brought to your attention? And what's your assessment in terms of the skills that you're producing?
There is a traditional, historic issue. The pace at which market moves is very different from the pace at which academia moves to adapt.
But Minister,
So
you're from the
creating a
private
gap.
sector, so you should be nimble enough, no?
Well, I'm not in charge of education, but even if I was, I know that it would be really a challenge for me to keep up with the pace because, talk about data analytics, which is brought by this big data movement and Internet of Things revolution. No one would have anticipated us 10 years ago to be able to evolve the education system, find teachers, teaching materials, even the academicians to agree among themselves what is it that goes mainstream in the education sector. So we need to understand that there could probably be some innovative ways of teaching, but I'm looking at Professor Bezi, who is sitting here in this room. He's a professor of Carnegie Mellon University. He knows these challenges, inside out, and probably later on he will chip in.
Absolutely.
But let me say that it's a challenge that we've recognized, and I think for the first time we are working now on a policy and strategy to be able to address this challenge as we move into the last 5 years of our Vision 2020. We want to make sure that as we get there, we are not only focused on infrastructure, on connecting people, but we are very much focused on content issues, on professional skills that are available in the market to take the companies to the next level. And as Tongai said, the people that are going to create the first billion-dollar company from East Africa.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. We are discussing the future of ICT and the revolution that is already underway and what we are doing as countries, as companies, to try to make sure that we remain relevant. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to be engaging our audience, which is here. The professor, the minister was talking about, is in the audience, and we certainly will be hoping that we can tap into his expertise and hear what they are doing in the universities to try to make sure that we are teaching our kids the right things. Join us after the break. Welcome back. You are watching a special debate here on CNBC Africa, where we are talking about the ICT revolution, and we're talking about what governments are doing, we're talking about what companies are doing, and I think importantly we're also talking about what our educational institutions are doing to make sure that the student who's coming through their doors comes ready-made to join industry and make a contribution. Before we took the break, we're talking about some of the issues around our education systems, and I think the things we're talking about here are things that apply to other parts of the African continent. And I wanted to pick on one or two of the thoughts of our guests during the break who picked up on something that they wanted to add to that contribution. Sam, you want to come back with your thoughts on the kind of student that you want and the kind of initiatives that you guys are taking to try to make sure that we get the right student walking through your doors after school.
Yes, that is also another partnership that we have to include between the educational institutions and then the private sector that requires those skills. So that's why, for example, recognizing that we don't have ready-made solutions from new graduates, we engage them when they are still in school. We have a cooperative program. First year, you come in during your holidays, spend 3 months with us, move from department to department. Understand that fiber is that small strand, not something the teacher writes on the board, We don't sometimes have those facilities. Toy with it first year, second year, learn what the real world requires. When you've done it 3 times and you have graduated, then you are ready. And I get a quick return from you when I employ you. Yeah. So it is a win-win situation.
Absolutely. Has it been making a difference?
Oh, it is making some difference.
Yeah.
Yes, not as fast as we would want.
For sure.
Because initially some students were motivated by the money we pay them, because we still have to pay them during that period.
Yeah,
but now we are being selective.
Right.
I should not have said it loudly because I'm now competing for the best students in those colleges.
With the guy next to you.
With that, I have to go to the universities and cherry pick. When we were doing it alone, I could pick the top.
Yeah.
But now everybody is learning about it.
Let's develop that thought, because Tongai, you were also speaking about the complexity that's coming into the relationship between competitors traditionally as we have understood them, and now the kind of environment that's creating partners out of competitors.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating reality of the way that the markets that we participate in are evolving. What I was realizing is that with Sam, with Liquid Telecom, he's our supplier, so he provides us our international bandwidth. But he's also a competitor because we both go to business clients and we offer them connectivity solutions. Sure. He's my client. He uses some of my services for his business. And then we're also partners. So there's a lot of opportunities that we see where there's collaboration that we can engage in to develop new sectors of the economy. So it's a bit of a mess really. But the way that you make the most of it is by recognizing that and trying to operate as part of an ecosystem.
Is that a good thing, or would the regulator be worried that you guys are going to collude and collaborate?
It's a fact. I mean, it's a fact. It's so long as the competitive dynamics of each of the spaces that we operate in are clearly defined, which I think they are. Yeah. I don't think that there should be anything to be concerned with. But sure, I'll defer to the government.
As an extension of the discussion around education, I want us to talk about research that we have been seeing, research and development that we've been seeing amongst our companies and amongst our educational institutions into thinking about these things of the future like we see in the developed world. In Africa, the culture of research and development has not been well developed. Minister, are we spending enough money on research and development? And do we have a strategy to fix it?
I don't think we're spending enough. There is this depressing statistic.
Do we value R&D?
You'll tell me, because the statistic tells us that there is less than 50 researchers out of 100,000 people in Africa, whereas other places in Europe and America have reached in excess of 2,000 per capita, per 100,000 people.
So in Africa, less than 50, did you say 50,000?
Less than 50 people, 50 researchers out of 100,000. Yes.
And in developed world?
2,500, Israel 3,000, US in excess of that. So the average globally stands at about 1,500.
Whose fault is it?
Not colonialism? Certainly.
Colonialism was washed away how many years ago?
Exactly. I think it's history. Let's put in a bigger perspective. But the good news is...
priorities as well.
Yeah. I would say that the good news is now STEMs, science, technology, mathematics, the understanding that it needs to be at the forefront of our education policy is there, is in place. Now the question is, are we putting enough money?
Yes.
I don't think we are putting enough money. If we go through our budgets, they will tell the truth. But the commitment to step up those efforts and try to catch up in our own small way with the rest of the world is there. But most importantly, valuing what we have already. The 50 that we have, do we give them enough value? I think that area of research and development is an important one that needs to be developed. But just a thought on education. Yes. I was looking at India, for instance. The world is going into the digital economy, the service-based economy. And India, with a population of 1.4 billion, is training about 350,000 IT graduates every year. Wow. That gives you a per capita rate of about one IT graduate every year out of 3,500 people. When I apply it to Rwanda and to Africa, we are still very far behind. And India is not leading the way in terms of training people in science, technology, and IT. So certainly, we need to be doing much more than this.
So the Internet of Things is leaving us far behind. Sam, yes. R&D.
Yes.
How important is it within our companies? And you can speak from your own experience inside.
R&D is very, very important. But having said that, if I first answer your part, why isn't it taking a big role in Africa? It's because the resources are limited and you have to share it.
Why are the resources limited? Because Africa is growing. We've got
first, we don't have the skills, the people who we talked about inadequate skills. So we don't even have people who would do R&D.
Okay.
Now, the second part is, if you see some of the products that we have been playing catch up. That means we have to copy. If it is a car, we shall assemble. If it is a phone, we shall do it like this.
Yeah.
Other people, you know, are buying plots on the moon and Mars. We are fighting here in swamps how to do in our jungles like that. So really, there is enough blame for Africa why we are behind. But suffice it to say that the rest of the world have moved up there. They are reaching even a saturation point.
So we need to move fast.
Now is time for Africa. If we are talking ICT,
Yeah.
as a business person, I wouldn't want to go to America and set up an ICT company or to Europe.
Cutthroat
I
competition.
come here
Yeah.
where now I recognize that 90% of the people are not connected. I convert that challenge into an opportunity. So Africa is ready, and now we can fly.
Tongai, your quick contribution to R&D and the importance and what we need to do to make sure we get it right.
Well, I think that I think it's critical. I mean, it's important for competition, but it's also important for creating more opportunity in the market generally for all the players. I would say that I'm not satisfied with the amount of research and development that we do. I guess what we do, we call innovation.
Who's we?
Tigo.
Thank you.
You know, I think there's more that we can do. I really believe that there's so much opportunity to be captured, but we often get caught up in the day-to-day of building a business in a nascent market.
Making sure there's return on investment, as Sam was saying, to the exclusion of actually thinking about the future.
Yeah, and you can also say that, you know, the innovation has happened here, which has transformed
the world.
The world, yes, exactly. So yeah, if you take M-Pesa, for example, so this was driven by application. And perhaps what needs to happen is that we need to drive penetration of the internet amongst the people that live in Africa, the people that live in East Africa. So that as they start to use it, they can start to show us that, hey, I have this need that you guys have never really addressed. Or I have this idea for how to address the needs of these other guys.
Do we need a tax break from the minister?
But the tax breaks are there. I mean, you know, the devices... For R&D, I think it could help. I'm actually not aware of what's in place for that.
In R&D is brain, then the brain is not taxed.
It's free.
You hear what you said? Yes. So government has done enough in terms of R&D, but we just need really to put resources into it. But we also need to develop the skills to make sure that we are able to utilize that R&D. Okay. All right. Let's take our conversation to our audience. Like I said, I introduced our audience earlier. Let's see if we can get some very pertinent comments, questions, suggestions from our audience.
A lot has been said about education here, so I like to give my perspective on that. I agree with the assessment that was made that what is coming out of higher education in this region is not on par with what the expectations are in the private sector. And it's a big challenge when we listen to the minister in terms of numbers. So how can we help that? And the ball seems to be in our camp in education. I would like to bring the ball back in the middle of the game because I believe it takes two to tango. So this will only work if private sector and education work more together. Let me take 3 examples of what we do at Carnegie Mellon University. And I compare that with other universities in the region. Not only in Rwanda, I've been in many countries in the region, similar situation. For example, when a student finishes graduation, he has to do a final dissertation. The students can select whatever subject he wants. In our university, the subject is submitted to us by the industry. That's a major difference. Very often I see students who come up with ideas that frankly said don't even have a chance to make it in the business. When you get something from the business, believe me, these are real problems. So that's one way that you can make it more. Okay. Second one, when we do internships, when we send our students to industries, we ask the industry to pay them. You know what that makes? The difference is when the industry pays our students, they make sure that they work on a real problem that's going to bring them value, instead of just sitting there fixing computers and stuff like that. And that gives the student a much better experience. Last, when I speak in courses, because of those interactions, I bring industry people in my course. Two of the gentlemen here, Tongai and Minister, are guest speaker in my course. That's how my students can listen to what the industry thinks, etc. So these are three simple ideas of how we can improve that.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, are you happy to pay?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, if you get great talent, you had great promise of talent, I think you should pay. I'd be very happy to do that, and we do.
Sam, you don't want a tax break in order to be able to pay?
No. Actually, I like paying them more than the competition because when they finish and they are the best, then they come and work for me. So I'm investing in them. So I have to pay them, you know.
Okay.
I think the challenge is more about is more a question of scale. You know, this is happening on a very small scale right now, and it needs to happen on a much larger scale if it's going to work, because it's fine for like institutions such as my own or Liquid Telecom or other the large institutions to take someone out of the higher education system and invest in building up their skills. But if you really want innovation to take off, you want to be able to have the small businesses also be able to have people come in who are ready to go.
Sure.
And that's where the scale will really help.
Absolutely. Let's take some more questions.
I have a couple of comments. I think the first one is the model Sam talked about, and he was kind enough to have 3 of our students this summer internship. I look after internship at Carnegie Mellon. And I think he's talking about, when he spoke to us, he said that he wants the students to contribute, learn and contribute. And then obviously when they graduate, hopefully they will be applying to him to get the jobs. I come from Canada, and in Canada I worked for a telephone company for 14 years. And when we hired from the university, they had a program called In-Depth, very similar to what Sam is talking about. So we were given 18 months in each department to kind of learn and then progress to different positions, and it was cross-pollination of different departments. And that allowed me to learn a lot about telecommunications in the telephone company. But even to date, I mean, you know, Carnegie Mellon, one of the top universities in the world, and has a lot of academic backgrounds and academic skills. I think the expectation of the industry, where I have a little concern, is that the industry is expecting them to jump in or parachuting themselves in the company and immediately produce. And I think if you look at the models of Oracle, Cisco, and many other companies, IBM, Dr. Beasley comes from IBM, 25-year veteran. I come from Bell Canada and Coopers and Lybrand and Price Waterhouse. And most of these top companies in the world, there has been a lot of company development. And that, I think, is a model I would like to see, the question, both of the members of the private sector, to find out whether that kind of a program could work. The second issue we have faced in the internship thing is that there seems to be a very strong culture of free internships. Because I have had companies tell me that, you know, your students will come, I will teach them. But at the same time, they don't understand that these are students coming from the top universities, and Rwanda made a huge investment in bringing a top university to this country.
That's why I asked if they were happy to pay.
Sorry?
That's why I asked if
some are. I mean, some are, but others expect us to provide them top quality students in the summer months, and then work for free. So there's that element as well.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Gentlemen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that there's always going to be some development that needs to happen from someone who's coming out of university. I mean, that's part of the story of work experience and career development. But I think that, you know, what our experience has been that we are starting from a lower base than we would like to develop the people that come into the organization. And I think that's the gap. It's not a question of our willingness to develop talent. It's more a question of
the best people possible.
Yeah, of course. But it's more a question of the starting point of that talent, and I think that's where the work needs to be done.
Okay.
Well, I think, as I said, we are working on a policy in that regard. I sort of joked when I say brains are not taxed; they are heavily taxed, actually. So we want to involve the private sector to see what is it that this new policy can put in place. And when you talked about tax, I think generally you talked about incentives. So what are kind of incentives are putting in place to make sure that not only we provide the best education with this kind of practicum, for instance, to the students.
Yeah.
Secondly, that we attract even talent. You know, as we keep training people, we need to attract talent that has been trained somewhere else, including our own people in the diaspora, to reverse the brain drain. But most importantly, to encourage the companies to invest in this kind of partnerships.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take another question. Okay.
When it comes to innovation and actually moving from catch-up kind of behavior to a trailblazing behavior, where we actually now start aligning us as the Silicon Africa or the technology appealing region within Africa, we need to do faster what we talk about. When we talk about talent, we need to really solve this problem faster for us to align ourselves. When we talk about smartphone penetration and connectivity for our population, we need to bring this on board faster. How are we doing? How are the telecoms are doing to take the risk to getting a smartphone in the hands of every user, so that user starts getting needs to more content, to more services on a smartphone? How is government taking risk or doing other innovative approaches to helping the telcos do rather accelerate that pace? Or how are we all together within industries aligning our region to attracting talents? Yes, we can build talents from our own university, but maybe if we are more hungry to become this appealing region within Africa when it comes to innovation, we can attract them. We can. What can we do? What risks can we take, or what innovations?
Sure. I think his key issue is let's take more risk.
Absolutely. I agree completely. And we've had this culture of taking risk. I give an example. Government 5 years ago decided that we should have a fiber optic network reaching out in every part of the country. And it was a time where even the country was not connected to the submarine cable.
Yes.
So people were wondering, what are you going to use this fiber for? So I think the industry didn't respond fast enough, and the government at that time took a risk and put $100 million into the ground. So that's an example of how you take risk. And this is what Sam did 15 years ago when we had to attract MTN. But I completely understand what Clément says. Our ambition is high, and it just requires more risk-taking, so that we can match it with the pace of change that will get where we want to go in the time we will have fixed ourselves.
Absolutely. If you want to say,
I want to say there's one word I don't like in the discussion. You know, when you are talking business and putting in a risk and you want to attract investment, the two don't go hand in hand. What it is, maybe you don't expect the return very quickly, but you have to have a clear path and a business plan. So all the small challenges, if I know I'm facing challenges this year, but I'm going to improve in the coming 2 years, I don't call that a risk. Because when you tell somebody, bring in money, but you know, there are no Mother Teresas among investors and people bringing in money. And if they are, they don't bring the money to Africa per se. But they come there for opportunities because they want that return.
They want their return.
So it's going to take some time, but it is happening there.
Absolutely. Okay, we need to take
one last point on education. What we are talking about to investors is not giving us good quality. It's accepting that the quality they have, their outputs are not, they have to make them more.
Okay.
There are very few university students right now who can write a one-paragraph report in any language, either in English or French or even in Rwanda. I've given them some aptitude tests. And from each one of the colleges, and those with distinction.
Okay.
So we have to do better, you know, at least then we teach them the rest as an industry, but the university should come, deliver a certain standard to us.
The standard needs to rise. I think that's the message that he's getting. Now, there's a gentleman whose hand was up a long time ago. Please give him the microphone and then we'll come to the gentleman.
Thank you very much. These revolutions which have come throughout time, like the first industrial revolution, it caused social upheaval and it caused suffering for many people. And so I'm thinking about this revolution, like it's going to also cause some suffering for people. And I'm asking the question, have you anticipated what is going to happen to other people, like when everything is now digitized? And are there any steps that you're taking to try and mitigate these things that are going to come in the near future as a result of this revolution?
Okay.
And then the second thing is a reflection, which is there's this tendency to look at Africa as being backward.
The jungles that you were talking about.
Yes, something like that. So they're saying that we're not moving forward because we're backward, but I think that, okay, it hurts me when I hear people say that, because I don't like to think like that. My grandfather, he really never went to school. He knows some English, but I would say that if it was not for him, I would probably not have completed my undergraduate education, because there is a lot of things I have learned from him. When I look at myself today, I know that my grandchildren will probably think that I was backward, because technology then might be a very different thing.
Yeah, okay.
So the reflection is that instead of just looking at Africa as being backward, we can learn from Africa, and maybe to fill up the big data gap, because there's a lot of culture,
Sure.
very rich culture,
Yeah.
from which we can learn. So instead of just calling us backwards, we should look at these cultures, understand why they have existed, why they have survived, why they're important, and how they can be applied for our growth and development. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, you want to talk about the privacy issue?
Sure. Let me offer a final thought on this issue of risk. I completely agree with both positions that we shouldn't put risk ahead, but it's more to say that when you build, will they come? Because some people say we need to first see the market, the demand, and then we can deploy the solutions. And what Clement was saying and what we've been saying is we are here to stay. This economy is growing, is going to keep growing in the next foreseeable future. Put what it takes, then you will realize your return investment in time. Some investors are just not as patient as we would like them to be. Okay. That's why for us government, we don't have any problem with that. We build and they will come. Sure. Now coming to the drawbacks of technology. Well, technology doesn't have to cause an upheaval. When you talked about it, two things came to my mind. One is the impact on children, for instance. So we've been taking steps to make sure that, for instance, kids are protected online.
Yes.
Is it enough? Are we doing enough? Is it possible at all? Yeah. I think this will translate into a new generation that thinks and works a bit differently. To us. And when they look at us, let them learn from us, not look at us as backward. The second thing that came to my mind is the Arab Spring. Yeah. The way this technology helped people connect and then drive a political revolution. Is it a bad thing or a good thing per se? Yeah. Let me say that time will tell, because it is too soon to say that what happened to Tunisia or Egypt or elsewhere is bad right now. I think it's too soon. It's in the middle of something that is still developing. But finally, when the car was invented, the engine and so on, and the car started driving at a pace that horses would never have attained, more than 40 kilometers per hour. There was some very, robust research that showed that the human being cannot survive at a speed of more than 40 kilometers an hour. So, and stop research development, don't go there. Please limit speed at 40 kilometers per hour. So I think the concerns that people have when there is a new technology emerging, you shouldn't ask the horse for an advice whether you should go to a car.
I think the key point to recognize is that there's no time to lose, like Sam said, and we need to be moving fast. Now, according to research from Wikibon, they are saying that by 2020, spending on the industrial internet, what we've been talking about, converting machines and machines that talk to each other, etc., is going to reach $500 billion. That's from $20 billion in 2012. So if we're not spending, we are being left behind. Thank you very much indeed for watching our program today. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for watching. And until next time, goodbye.